Good afternoon, evening, or night, wherever you are. Today we have Skip on the podcast. We're going to talk about what we have been dealing with a lot lately, and that is customer feedback.
Mhm,
And over the past 3 years, since we rebranded and launched Humanize IT, we've got a lot of customer feedback.
mhm.
It's been 2.5 years, so almost 3 years. And it's all about like, where do you prioritize? Like, how do you take customer feedback? We start thinking like, how do MSPs take this feedback? Where where do you say, yes, this is something I want to improve? And other one's like, well, that's just a dumb idea. And you do think that sometimes you're like, I can see why you think that would be a clever idea, but let me walk you through what would happen if we enabled that feature.
Uh-huh. Yep,
And also you're like, oh, I never thought about it that way.
yep. Well, and I think and this is, pretty specific to us. There's several goals with software, right? But 2 of them you can kinda categorize as, are you supporting a process? Does your software enable something, very structured and probably rigid to happen? Or are you enabling a user, all right, an actual person to actually do something? And before we were getting on the call, I was kind of thinking about this. If you've got an accounting system or specifically an invoicing system, that is a very structured process, and you want that to happen just a particular way. Now, in my years of doing IT support, I have seen some absolutely atrocious accounting and financing invoicing sort of softwares. The users absolutely hate it. But companies come back again and again, year after year after year, and they still continue to use that software because that software fulfills the process that's important to the organization. Now, you flip that over to say like a sales software, right? If you're excluding, high volume commodity based sales and focusing really on a value based sales, which many in the MSP are focused on that value selling. Do you want to support a rigid, structured, unbending process? Or do you want to support your user who's actually engaging with your customers? So, completely different goals. But now we've got these squishy, we've got these users, okay, in there. And if you've done IT support, I probably shouldn't have to say anything more than that. We've got these users, and how do you support them at scale? And obviously, their feedback is really, really important. And yes, it's one of the things we have to listen to really, really closely because there are so many different ways to do it, and that becomes a real challenge, I think, in our little niche of software and development and where we are. We're really, really supporting that user, and there are a lot of differences out there. There's a lot of
Yeah. And
style.
I remember back, I always talk about UI in context of Microsoft.
Mhm.
And I'm going to go back into the Wayback Machine here. If you used Microsoft Office back in 2003,
Mhm.
you know exactly where I'm going to go with
Oh
this.
yes, you're talking about the ribbon.
When the ribbon was released. See,
Yes.
I didn't even have to say it.
Oh no. Yep. I know exactly where you're going.
The problem was is that we had these menus that we had been dealing with since like the late 80s, early 90s,
Uh
and we
huh.
had them memorized.
Yeah.
I knew exactly where I needed to go to get the checkbox I needed.
Oh, I
But
knew I
it's
knew the
because it'd
function
been
key shortcuts, man.
yeah, yeah, I could do the commands, I could do everything. And then they changed it.
Mhm.
The jerks changed it and they brought out this liberal monstrosity known as the ribbon.
Yep.
And it was this squishy feel good thing. And I, as an IT support person, so let me tell you a story. I had just converted an entire organization from Corel Word Perfect
Oh,
over to Microsoft Office.
alright.
And so I just gotten everybody used to Microsoft Office.
Yeah, you'd already
And they
taken a whooping on that one, probably.
Yeah, like I am a beaten dog here, guys.
Yeah.
And, so because I mean, if you use Crow or Perfect 7, that's where remember the little taped on a thing
Oh,
above all the
yes,
function
absolutely.
keys?
Yeah.
That's where that came from, man.
And those nice, really usually, um, really friendly admin staff people that you get along with great. Yeah, they can really turn on you when you take away their function keys and the way they do their job. Absolutely. So yeah, I bet you took a lot of grief for that one.
So when it comes where this comes into dealing with customer feedback is the ribbon came out because people they put like some like $5 or $6 million into going out and asking people how they worked.
Hmm.
And they watched the workflow and they mapped out this new ribbon that everybody knows now. You guys all know it now.
Yeah, most of you
It
don't know.
it's been over 20 years since they
Yep.
switched it. And so this menu driven idea that we were all like, it was just part of the culture. What do? You go edit preferences and then you check this box.
Yeah.
Anyways, now you had to like, everything's moved. I had to figure things out. And so as a technician, I was like, okay, um, the best advice I got was, where should this feature be?
Hmm.
And just think about it for a second. Well, it should be, oh, there it is.
Yeah.
And this intuitive nature, and you had to break it because you had all this muscle memory and you knew the hit F5 and you knew how to do all these things.
Yeah.
And you're so used to using the keyboard because that's the way we operated through the 80s and the 90s. It was largely keyboard commands. And
Hmm.
then we got a GUI, but we never updated the UI because why would you? Everybody loves the way it works. And then
Yeah.
once it took about it took about 6 months for somebody to get used to the ribbon. And once they did, they loved it. And the next step from there was they just kept improving the ribbon. Where should things be? And now almost every tool uses a ribbon style
Hmm.
that you just kind of got to know where things are, from your Adobe software to your Foxit to even the way browsers work nowadays is completely different. Go and Google it sometime. WordPerfect 2003 or Microsoft Office 2003. Either
Yeah.
of those two softwares were all menu driven,
Hmm.
and so it was
Work
this
very differently.
world of UI got opened up at that time of how do we make things easier for the user and what feedback should we listen to?
Mm.
And so with us as a software company, we do the same thing. I've always done a plan, build, run methodology. You plan out what you're going to do, you build it, you run it and get feedback at the same time. And
Hmm.
then you go back into a planning phase and you keep this cycle going. This is how your iterative process works. And there are other ways of discussing this, but I like the PBR because one, the beer, two, it really lays out this simple function of how do you get feedback. And sometimes we get feedback from people and it's like, okay, I get where you're going with that, but that's a bad idea.
Yep. Yep.
And even in your personal lives or your professional lives, like even like in your medical lives, whatever trade you're in, like it makes sense that you should put the brake here instead. Like, well, if you do that, you're going to step on your clutch and your brake at the same time, and bad things are going to happen.
Yeah.
And so there are things that where people say the words, just use common sense. Well, that doesn't really work in UI. It doesn't, something that seems like it's common sense does not map well. There's a reason why we can't do it this way. However, I like where
Mm.
you're going and I see your frustration with where the button is right now.
Yep.
How about this as a solution to that pain point? And so what I did there was I didn't dismiss the problem. I acknowledged the problem. I just dismissed their solution to it.
Yep. Well, and let me be really candid here. I mean, we've got a spot in our software that we want to improve. Right? We made great improvements to it a while back.
Oh yeah.
Now does way more than it did. And I was working with a member just the other day, and we're looking at this, and what comes up initially, they're like, "Oh, that's really not what I was expecting." And I've learned to kind of listen to what do they want to do. All right. If they're wanting a specific view, that's one thing. But if they're wanting a view because it enables them to do something else, well, then that's the real goal.
Yeah.
And maybe sometimes there is things we need to transition and move around. So that was a bit of the conversation. Now, that member had some really valid feedback on that view, and we are actually working on that. We have been working on that, and so we're tweaking that out. But in listening to the member, I was able to meet some of their expectations and many of the important ones by just understanding what they did. Where were they expecting to go? All right. I had a different our software has a different step than they've taken in the past, but the destination was further down the road where they really want to go. And so we overcame some of that. Now, again, we're working on these elements, and it's this listening process that's really important. But again, kind of like my early, example of process being the goal or supporting the user being the goal, you have to understand where they're going and the best routes to get there. So this is just like every other thing that we talk about in pretty much all of our videos. It
Yeah.
seems like you've got to listen. You've
Well,
got
and
to ask questions and listen carefully to what your clients, what your customers really, really want.
yeah, and I think what's important here is like, so Skip had this conversation with the customer, and they're like, "Oh gosh, this is not what I was expecting." Skip brought it to me and goes, "We really need to figure out some way to map or filter data better." And I said, "Actually, we have that on our 2025 roadmap.
We do. Yep.
It's Epic 1, Sprint 3." I showed Skip right where it was. Like,
Yep.
if this is important to the customer, if this is a deal breaker for them, let's just prioritize this so it's done here in the next 2 weeks.
Mhm.
And voila, like we already had this as part of our bigger picture. But now we can design the feature in a way that we're working with a customer, and so they can say, "Oh yeah, that flow works." Rather
Yes.
than us just making it up and thinking about it in a vacuum, we're going to work with a customer and design out a feature that behaves in the end the way it should. Just like the ribbon back in 2003, if you would ask users what should we design, the users said, "Oh, you need us to make more efficient menus," which they've been doing for 15 years. They've been making more efficient menus.
Yep.
And so they said, let's actually like see the problem. They want more useful options available within 1 click
Mhm.
or 2 clicks. And so when somebody says, "Hey, this feature isn't working quite right. Can you just do map it so it makes it better?" Like, well, tell you what, we already have a feature we're going to be releasing. Let's just prioritize it. And can you work with us to make sure this is a natural flow? And that's what we look for at Humanize IT is we try to find people when we're designing, find a customer who's actually doing this workflow and work with them and get feedback from them. They say, "Yes, that's working great," or "Ooh, that's ugly." Like we have one feature right now we're working on, and Skip like gets on a call with them, says, "Is this flowing the right way?" And they're like, we're kind of like 80% the way there, but this last 20% is really messed up."
Yep.
Like, okay, go back to the devs, give them the
Yep.
feedback. And now when the next person comes in and has the same workflow or a similar workflow, they're like, "Oh my gosh, this just works. It goes the way I expect it to." And that's how you get that intuitive feedback. So when you're as an MSP and your customer is just butting heads with you or the workflow
Mhm.
isn't working for them, they don't like doing it this way, work with them and say, what kind of workflow would be useful? And it might be that they're just absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
Or it might be that they help you design something that's way more intuitive. And so when customers start working with you, they're like, man, it is just so easy to work with this MSP.
Yep.
And they can't put their finger on why, but it's because you've spent the last 3 to 5 to 10 years building workflows that your customers like.
Yep. Well, and I saw this several times when we did um, Cisco Call Manager deployments. Right. So kind of back in the heyday, people still had a lot of PBXs or key systems, and we're migrating from these systems to a modern IPT solution. And part of that process was mapping what was already there. I mean,
Yeah.
extensions, group extensions and stuff like that, that all makes sense. But over the years, I mean, these systems had been in place sometimes, you know, a couple of decades, those Nortel systems went way back.
Yeah.
They would have not just, hey, this extension rings in this room, but they would have flows and processes they went through. And it was always a matter of documenting that and then recreating that in Call Manager. And it was flexible. And yes, we could do all that. But there were many times where we needed to stop and like ring down lines. Okay. Those are kind of odd and got used, I think, more in plant environments. So a ring down line is when the caller picks up the phone, they dial an extension, all right, or they just pick up a phone. It automatically does something, right? It rings and it goes to this immediately, and we could do those, but we found that sometimes they wanted them all over the place. And we had to go back and ask, why? Why do you need this? This is going to make
Yeah.
phones ring all over the place. Do you really need this ring down feature? And many times we found that it was because, back in the day, they needed this because nobody had any sort of paging sort of ability, or nobody had any mobile phones. And so they had to do this function. And so now we understand, hey, the goal is to reach this person or this very small group of people. We've got better tools to do that. How about we accomplish the goal that you're looking for, but we don't use the ring down feature? And once you kind of really start getting onto those elements, that's when you are empowering users. They're like, "Oh, that's going to be great. Yes, I can do what I need to do even when I'm not near one of those phones that's in the ring down tree." So this feedback is really, really important, not just for making things work, but making things successful, making
Yes.
things valuable. If you took a tried and true, rock hardened Nortel system and you replaced it with a Cisco Call Manager and it functioned one for one, everything was absolutely the same, you've accomplished something. You've migrated them from old hardware to new hardware. Great. Right? But did you really add any value? Is the
Yeah.
user able to do anything more? And that's what you've got to keep an eye on. And you're not going to know this, right? As a, call manager engineer, you really don't understand the day-to-day operations of a gas plant system that, sitting out of the middle of nowhere where you've got to have a lot of training. You even have to shave your beard to get into the control room. You're just not
You
going to
gotta wear the
understand what's going.
hairnet.
No, no, no. The SCBA deal, you have
Oh,
to have
really?
yeah,
Wow.
got to be clean shaven to wear the SCBAs. Although, no, I won't get started on that. Anyway, you've got to get. I mean, there's just no way that you can expect, the general IT population to understand the value that they would really get out of changing some things. So, how are you going to find that value? You've got to talk to people. You've got to listen to their feedback, and you can't come at it with preconceived notions. All right, you can't look at it and go, "This will work great. I've done this, 15 times in accounting firms and engineering offices and doctors' offices. This works awesome." All right. That's not going to fulfill the same needs and provide the same value at a gas processing plant that literally can have, deadly gas floating around at any moment than the CPA firm. Right.
Yeah.
So you've got to listen. That's just at the end of the day, you've got to listen.
And incorporate that in a way that makes sense. That's the context I'm gonna apply here. And this goes for anything, from how you manage your family to how you manage your relationships and friends. And what you want to do is, manage this in a way that it's constantly improving. It goes back to our continuous improvement plans. So, is this feedback you're getting from your customer going to help other customers? Is this feedback going to make things easier? It may make it harder on your team. Like, for instance, like Skip and I would love it if everybody just liked our software as it is and we never had to make any changes to it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Instead, we get into these arguments and we debate and we get frustrated and we work through this stuff with our developers to say, hey, how do we make this the way it should be? So that
Hmm.
when people walk in, they go, wow, that really is intuitive. That works well. Cause we have a lot of people out there who come back to us and say, your software is just so much easier to use than some of the other stuff that's out there. Like other software might have other better functionality in different ways, but because it's not a good workflow, they want to come back to the one that works. Like an iPhone is not the best phone on the market. The Galaxy is. In my opinion, the Galaxy is the best phone
Yep.
on the market. And there's some other great ones too, but they aren't as fluid as the iPhone as it from an
Mhm.
ecosystem standpoint.
That's it. The goal of what you want to do with it. Yes.
And so the idea there is that you want to create something that is able to be fluid for your customers. So as you get feedback from your customers, that you're incorporating with that or and making and building with them in mind and with their active feedback. They are your QA, so to speak, because they're the ones that have to use it in the end. It
Hmm.
may made more sense from a financial standpoint or from a logistics standpoint to keep improving the menus at Microsoft, but they knew they had a lot of frustration from users who couldn't find the features they wanted. And
Yep.
so they rethought it and came up with a new design concept that is the de facto way of doing things today.
Yeah.
What is it that your MSP could be doing or your business or you and your life could be doing that makes things more of a natural workflow for those around you? How do you build that? And so that's where user feedback comes into play or client feedback comes into play. Is like, does this improve the experience? So people are like, my gosh, this is easy.
Yeah. Well,
Oh my gosh, I can do things now.
yes. And this comes up in our coaching program from time to time, and you get some people that are hesitant to engage with customers at that level, right? And they kind of push back with, "Hey, I'm technical, right? I like the technical elements. I can get in there, and this whole discussion element is just not my comfort zone."
Yeah,
And the easiest way to accomplish that is to leverage what probably got you into technology field to start with, and that's your curiosity. All right. You sat down one day and you're like, I wonder what? I wonder if I do this. What happens when, I select this option? And you just started walking through it. You can do the same thing in these environments where you might initially feel you're not very comfortable, but just use your curiosity. Ask your customers, how are you using this? Where do you struggle with this? Where does it work really, really well? And your natural problem solving tendencies will kick in immediately and you go, oh, I can fix that. I can make that even better. We can make that rock solid. So leverage your curiosity in that feedback and your discomfort that you might have with some of these engagements really gets sidelined because you'll find yourself driving deeper and deeper into these different areas where you never thought you might be, but you're following your curiosity. So I think that's a pretty common trait for a lot of IT people,
yeah,
and lean into that to really drive the feedback loop.
yeah. And that it's not hard. You just got to listen, as Skip was saying earlier. Like really listen to what they're saying, hear where their frustrations are, so that you can incorporate and find solutions that maybe are better than the ones they're thinking about. Well, why don't you just do this? Well, let me run something by you. What if we did it this way? And you see them click through and go, "Oh my gosh, that is better." Just like
Hmm.
Microsoft.
Yeah.
What if we did a ribbon? Ah, it looks so different. I don't like it. It's too new. It's too much change all at once. Like, wait a minute. This actually feels kind of nice. I
Yeah.
can get to places really easily. Oh, it's right there. I can just click it. Okay. Okay. I see where you're going and I'm okay with this.
Yep. Well, and,
And
and you need to foster a dialogue. It starts with that, but you need to keep it going. So you get some feedback, you put together a proposal, an idea, and you run to your clients and like, I don't know. Well, if you're fostering this feedback and this collaboration effort, you can let them try it, right? And they may come back and go, "Oh, this is awful." Well, don't just take that as no. Why is it awful? Right? Can we maybe try it a little bit longer? Is it just a timing issue? Is it a training
Yeah.
issue? And you can start small. I mean, you might not want to roll out a drastic change to an entire department with 50 people. Maybe you have a pilot group that you run with and you get great feedback. The really cool parts about that as you develop that, once you are ready to roll that out to the whole 50-person department, you've got advocates internally. You've got customers bought in. They're already championing the cause because they see the value. And it's not all on you to go and try to convince all 50 users that this is really the best way to do it. So you can help yourself by getting your clients involved in these.
Yeah.
But don't make it a one-time event. Don't go out there and go, "Yeah, I listened to everything they said and we made some changes and they're still not happy." All right? No, you've got to keep that iterative process going to refine that until your clients get to the point where they're like, "Wow, I think this might be perfect." You know, Y- there's a very, very slim chance that you're going to get perfect right out of the gate. All right. So you need to plan for more steps, but where you end up is way, way better than just trying to make a one off, uneducated, because it's an uneducated guess about where your clients need to be.
Yeah. So take some time, listen, dealing with their feedback. They're not always right, but hear the problem,
Hmm.
hear the symptom, and see if like maybe there's a bigger issue here and we need to figure it out. When you have customers walking out the door and it's like, well, I just couldn't make them happy. Okay. Is this happening over and over again? When
Hmm.
you've got employees, you can't retain them. Well, they just don't get it. I'm just getting bad employees.
Hmm.
Okay. What's the problem? When you're getting feedback from, your peers, your partners, and they're saying the same thing, you know what? They may not be correct in the solution, but you got to admit there's a problem and then
Hmm.
start using that feedback. Like, what if I did this and then do it? And then give me like, how was that experience for you? How did that feel? So we just redid this entire section of the product. And then we went out and somebody said, this is not quite right. I'm like, oh, well, let us tweak a little bit and get that where it's right.
Yep.
So I think this is a great conversation, Skip. This is
Yep.
applicable across your life. Take feedback, listen to it, and see if you can't hear the problem behind the feedback.
Yep.
And then try to come up with a solution that feels right to your client. So you take the feedback, process it, come up with a solution, then ask them, what if we did this? Would this make you feel heard? Would this solve your problem? And they may say, oh my gosh, I didn't even think about it that way. You're an
Hmm.
engineer. It's your job to come up with cool solutions.
Yep.
So thanks for coming on, Skip. This has been a
You bet.
great conversation. It's good to get back into the flow of podcasts again after this busy summer.
Absolutely.
See you
Thanks.
all next week.